There it is. He timed it right.
Counting to explode with the left. Oh, and that right, but Davis took off some of the steam of the punch, but still.
Welcome to the motherfucking lady. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. You may have heard yesterday that Amanda Serrano versus Cheyenne Hanson is set to co-headline the May 30th MVPW card. Yesterday, Most Valuable Promotions officially announced an MVPW 03 card set for May 30th, which will feature Amanda Serrano returning to the ring to take on Cheyenne Hanson in a featherweight unification in El Paso, Texas. The card will stream live on ESPN and also be headlined by a fight between Stephanie Hahn and Holly Holm. What is their rematch? Serrano, who is recently coming off a decision win over then unbeaten Reina Tellez. That was earlier this year. That was a good fucking fight. This past January shared some of her thoughts on this outing via a press release. When MVP told me that Hahn and Holm were going to rematch in Stephanie's hometown of El Paso, I said I want to get on that card to support these two queens, said Amanda Serrano. Women's boxing is growing on a global level, and fights like this, now on ESPN, and contested for 3-minute rounds, are proof of how far we've come. I respect every opponent who steps in the ring, and I know Cheyenne Hanson is coming to win, and she does have knockout power. I'm also continuing to hunt the all-time knockout record, so that's on my mind. But everything starts with discipline, execution, and performing at the highest level on fight night. Stephanie Hahn is all class, and it is my pleasure to come to her city and make the walk before her on Saturday, May 30th. See you soon, El Paso. Hanson, for her part, expresses her excitement for the opportunity on a big televised stage. I'm really excited and grateful for the fight, said Cheyenne Hanson. It means a lot to be representing Germany on this stage. Training camp is going to be hard, but I'm focused. I respect my opponent, but I'm coming to make a statement. I've seen Cheyenne Hanson here and there over the years because she's been around a while, though I seldom ever talk about her because she doesn't compete at a very high level. I would say that over the years, she's capped out at European level. Which isn't bad, by the way, but that is basically saying that Amanda Serrano is a huge step up in competition for Cheyenne. Thus, I don't expect Cheyenne to win. For Amanda Serrano, Cheyenne would present as little more than just a stay busy fight. It's what she is. It was a pleasant surprise when the news broke, albeit somewhat impromptu. Somewhat short notice. When they initially made the rematch between Stephanie Hahn and Holly Holm, I don't think it was their original plan to have Amanda on the undercard. It seems like something they came up with after the fact, which begs the question, why? Amanda's a bigger name than anybody on this show. Why is she in the co-main event? Well, it could be that they need Amanda Serrano's help. She doesn't want to steal their thunder, the girls in the main event, but they need her help to sell the fight and maybe sell some tickets. Perhaps they initially thought that the fight would sell better than it's selling. It going down in Stephanie Hahn's native El Paso, Texas. Maybe they added Amanda to the show to boost ticket sales or viewership for the fight. As it is very peculiar, someone of Amanda Serrano's stature willfully fighting in the co-main event when she is so obviously a main event fighter. Perhaps that's why. They need Amanda Serrano's help to sell this fight. Amanda Serrano herself, always gracious, isn't too good to fight on the undercard, and we all know that Amanda's not a glory hog like some other fighters. Always willing to shed light on the other women boxers in the circuit, she's not trying to steal Stephanie or Holly's thunder. Not but a few days ago, I saw Amanda say on her social media that in all likelihood, this will be her final year in the sport of boxing. This is going to be her second fight of the year in May, leaving plenty of room in the fall and winter months for her to have a bigger fight, a swan song. See that Alicia Baumgartner has been calling her out, not just Amanda, but also Katie Taylor for fights, neither of which I expect to happen. I think if Amanda wanted to move up in weight, wanted to fight Alicia Baumgartner, MVP and ESPN would certainly be behind it, and it really would be one of the bigger fights, if not the biggest fight in women's boxing at the moment. But Amanda Serrano has already spent so many years fluctuating in weight and looking for big opportunities that at this late stage in her career, I don't expect her to keep doing that, to concede weight to Alicia Baumgartner, to move up to 130 to fight for her belts. I don't see it. Back over to her opponent in May, Cheyenne Hanson of Germany, one of many women boxers the country has produced in recent years. She can put up a fight, though I don't expect her to put up the same fight that we just saw Reina Tellez put up when she fought Amanda at the beginning of the year. I remember Cheyenne some years ago made headlines for what was a gruesome injury she suffered during a fight. A very pretty girl with a very ugly hematoma on the side of her head. I expect that Amanda Serrano may give her another one. I don't think Cheyenne Hanson is as durable or as strong as Reina Tellez was, and for that reason, there's every possibility Amanda stops her. We'll talk more about the fight as the fight date approaches. Elsewhere in the world of boxing, you may have heard earlier today that both Richardson Hitchins and Edgar Berlanga have officially joined Zuffa Boxing. I expected as much. I expected both to do so, both being managed by Keith Connolly, who's already funneled Conor Benn over to Zuffa. Zuffa Boxing announced this morning that they'd signed super lightweight champion Richardson Hitchins and super middleweight contender Edgar Berlanga to their roster ahead of planned summer debuts. This is a major step forward in my career, said Hitchins. I'm grateful for this opportunity, and I want to thank Dana White, Nick Khan, and my manager, Keith Connolly, for giving a kid from Brooklyn the opportunity to fight on the biggest stage against the world's best fighters. With Zuffa Boxing in my corner, I'm going to show the world that I am, pound for pound, a generational fighter. Is that what he can expect to encounter over there? The world's best fighters? Is that where he can prove that he's one of the best fighters in the world? No, not really, but that explains why he's over there. Zuffa Boxing is changing the game, said Berlanga. I'm here for the biggest fights on boxing's best platform. I'm here to put the super middleweight division on notice. The monster is back. Thank you, Dana White, Nick Khan, and the entire Zuffa Boxing team for believing in my talent. I also want to thank my father, Edgar Berlanga Sr., and manager, Keith Connolly, for always guiding me in the right direction, and this move is no different. This is going to be a special journey. Two things immediately stand out. One is that Zuffa Boxing doesn't recognize either of their divisions. Going straight from 135 to 147 and 160 to light heavyweight, the other is that Hitchens risks running into the exact same scenario as Jai Opataya, whom the IBF stripped earlier this year for pursuing the Zuffa belt. Hitchens is presently on the clock to defend his belt against mandatory challenger Lindolfo Delgado, meaning Zuffa has to either negotiate with Top Rank or risk a purse bid if they want Hitchens to hold on to his title. Or Hitchens could just ditch the belt and go straight up to 147. The man's been clear about his struggles with the cut, which scrapped a plant defense against Oscar Duarte earlier this year. And what did I tell you? What did I say? He wasn't sick. That's not why he pulled out of the Duarte fight. He pulled out of the Duarte fight because it was more trouble than it was worth, and he had something else on the horizon. This being that, migrating over to Zuffa, in keeping with the trend of Keith Connolly taking his boys over there, but either way, something's gonna have to give. The press release claims there will be a Q&A before UFC 327's ceremonial weigh-ins, but going by past history, odds are nobody will ask anything about these issues. So what, Zuffa's gonna have a super middleweight division now? Let's explore Edgar Berlanga's current predicament, him migrating over to Zuffa, that initially said they weren't gonna recognize the juniors or the supers. They were gonna stick to the traditional 8 weight classes. Are they now going back on that? I'm not sure. Are they gonna make a special exception for Edgar Berlanga based on his perceived name value? The way I see it, this is probably the best move for Edgar. Think about it. After having been knocked out by Hamza Shiraz in Queens all those months ago, I don't imagine there were very many, if any, offers pouring in for Edgar Berlanga to fight in big fights. And what big fights are out there are mostly fights that Edgar Berlanga loses. Who are we really talking about? Jaime Munguia, Christian Mabili, Kevin Lele Sajo, Diego Pacheco, Bektemir Melenkuziev. I think Edgar Berlanga loses to all of those guys. I think he loses all of those fights. I don't think he can beat Bruno Surace. He loses to that guy. I don't think he can beat Oslis Iglesias, Jacob Bank, William Skull, who just got beat by Jacob Bank. I don't think Edgar can beat anybody halfway decent at super middle, so that going to Zuffa might be just what the doctor ordered, to buy him enough time to reanimate his dwindling boxing career. He will not encounter at Zuffa what he would have encountered in regular boxing that would have regularly required him to take a risk.
This is a guy who wants a lot of money every time he fights due to his inflated sense of self and marquee value, so to get at what you want, you would have had to take some risks. More fights that would have ended like the Shiraz fight.
Whereas if he hides out over there at Zuffa, away from regular boxing for a few fights in a few years, he's afforded the chance to rebuild and make respectable money at the same time, because I don't think Keith would have took him over there for peanuts on a dollar. The only question is, where is Edgar going to campaign? Is Zuffa now going to put together a super middleweight division, or are they just going to make a special exception for Edgar to try and get him fights, like, say, the Caleb Plant fight?
He ain't been doing nothing for a while.
That it's not so much that Zuffa is now going to have a super middleweight division, but they will broadcast Edgar's super middleweight fights, like a potential Caleb Plant fight that I think, if they picked it up, they could get some eyes on that.
Under normal circumstances, for the money those two guys would want, you would have to do it as a pay-per-view, whereas Zuffa can broadcast it via Paramount Plus at no additional charge.
They're both coming off of losses, Edgar and Caleb. Caleb's coming off the loss to Armando Resendiz. Edgar is coming off the loss to Hamza Shiraz. Together, they would present as the most winnable fight against the somebody either fighter can have.
In all honesty, that's a decent-sized fight that Zuffa should try to pick up, because under normal circumstances, Berlanga versus Plant wouldn't move the needle but so much if one of the conventional promotional outfits made it. But if Zuffa makes it, it takes on a life of its own.
Sort of in a different light, has a different flair.
So it's not so much that Zuffa is now going to recognize the super middleweight division. It could just be that when it comes to Edgar, they're going to make some super middleweight fights just for him. It might be the same thing for Richardson Hitchins.
Hitchens, who according to veteran boxing scribe Chris Mannix intends to continue fighting at 140 pounds, a source told Sports Illustrated Now, Zuffa Boxing, which does not have a 140-pound division, announcing Hitchens signing today. Hitchens is facing a mandated title defense against top-ranked promoted Lindolfo Delgado.
If he wants to keep that belt, he has to fight that guy. But of course, we already saw what happened to one other IBF champion for having migrated over to Zuffa,
Jayo Pataya.
So is the same thing about to happen to Richardson Hitchins? Is he about to be stripped of the IBF title for satisfying his mandatory over there?
There was no point of where it said, there was no detail about what weight class they'd be fighting in. Both of these fighters fight in the in-between weight classes, the tweener weight classes, the ones that were not part of the original weight classes that Zuffa has said that they're only going to compete at. So Hitchens is a junior welterweight or a super lightweight, 140 pounds, which apparently is not supposed to be in one of the weight classes for Zuffa. And Edgar Berlanga is 168, which is super middleweight between light heavyweight and middleweight. Does that mean these guys are going to change weight classes, or does that mean that Zuffa is going to bend their rules and allow these guys to fight in these weight classes? Because, listen, Hitchens is a legitimate world champion. He's an IBF current world champion. Moving over to Zuffa.
That was my belt, 140 pounds.
That's exactly right. Your former belt, and that's a legitimate championship. Now, does he have to relinquish that now? Because obviously we saw what happened with the IBF and Jayo Pataya. Or do they make this new quote unquote weight class for Zuffa?
I think the IBF just basically strips him. I mean, even if he doesn't relinquish it, I think the IBF basically does. You can't strip Jayo Pataya and then not strip Richardson Hitchins under the same premise, right? So now,
well, this is boxing. You can do a lot of different things. I mean, we've seen.
Yeah, but then Jai could sue you. You know what I'm saying? Like, now you got to hold that standard. You know, and I would assume the IBF didn't set that standard to not hold on to it, to not hold it. So I think the IBF's probably just going to strip Richardson Hitchins of his 140-pound world championship, because he signed this contract. But I think what I said the other day is my thoughts here. My thoughts are that I think the weigh-ins, if they're going to go back to the old school weight classes, they should go back to the old school weigh-ins, and they should be the morning of the fight.
In which case, Hitchens would most likely have to move up anyway.
Yeah, well, I think they have to.
Might be why he's willing to gamble his status as a champion. It's because underneath it all, he knows he's not long for the 140-pound division anyway, or the IBF title. Maybe he hangs on to it long enough to defend it against Lindolfo.
To have that fight, but ultimately, he's gonna move up to welter.
What I think is going on here is that Richardson Hitchins and Conor Benn, who's supposed to be returning to action this weekend on the undercard of Fury versus Makhmudov, will be two fighters that comprise Zuffa's welterweight division. They will both converge there after some months.
Zuffa will make a fight between them for what will be their inaugural Zuffa welterweight title. That division has yet to really take shape.
We've seen more of what Zuffa has to offer in, say, the lightweight division or the light heavyweight division. We haven't seen much of what they've got going on at 147, but I anticipate that both Richardson Hitchins and Conor Benn will converge there. Momentarily, Richardson Hitchins is still IBF champion, running the risk of being stripped just like Jai Opetaia,
except for one key difference. When Jai Opetaia fought Brandon Glanton in his Zuffa debut, it was for a Zuffa belt at cruiserweight,
where to my knowledge, Zuffa doesn't have a 140-pound division, and thus, they don't have a Zuffa title there. So when Richardson Hitchins makes his Zuffa debut opposite the ring Lindolfo Delgado, who he's been ordered to fight by the IBF, they won't have that excuse to strip him, because he's not fighting for a Zuffa belt.
Not at 140.
And if afterwards he moves up to 147, tries to fight for the Zuffa belt up there, the IBF wouldn't have any belt to strip him of, because he doesn't hold a title at 147.
For Richardson Hitchins, this was perhaps the best move.
He wants the big names like Devin Haney and Ryan Garcia and Rolly Romero, the big names at welter, but in all likelihood, if he would have moved up there under normal circumstances, they would have just ignored him.
With no belt at welter and no financial incentive because Richardson Hitchins ain't got no marquee value, if he would have just moved up there,
they all would have gave him the cold shoulder. So going to Zuffa was perhaps the best move for him. And if going to Zuffa operates as a segue to get him in the ring with Conor Benn, that is a big name. That would be a big fight for Richardson Hitchins, it would be.
Not so much for Conor, but for Richardson Hitchins, definitely.
What all of these fighters have in common is that they are managed by Keith Connolly, who surely isn't doing this out of the kindness of his own heart. Getting Zuffa Boxing these familiar fighters, there must be some sort of cash incentive that leaves him so inclined to take all his boys over there.
Manager in the sport of boxing, their rationale is not hard to understand. It's motivated by money, just like anything else, just like anybody else in the industry.
The only reason he'd be so hip to take all his boys over to Zuffa is because there's something in it for him. Something more than doing things the regular way. Thus, Richardson Hitchins, who still is an unbeaten fighter and unbeaten champion, can regain some traction, some momentum in his career following his departure from Matchroom that ended with a knockout win over former champion George Kambosos all the way back there in June of last year, what turned out to be the only fight he had that entire calendar year. It's taken him close to a year.
You know that it'll probably be a year by the time he fights again.
He's missed a lot of time and he now has to make up for it. I don't think it was ever his intention to fight for undisputed at 140, unify titles with the other champions that are there, like say Gary Antoine Russell or Dalton Smith. Going to Zuffa, he has put distance between himself and those fights.
Then why fight Lindolfo Delgado? Why defend the IBF title? Why not just drop it?
It's a valid question that needs an answer, and I'm sure that we'll get it in the coming days and weeks.